All right, good afternoon. Sorry for the delay. The devil's in sound systems and video recording systems. I'm Scott Leonard, the pastor here at Stone Church, and welcome for all you coming out on Palm Sunday afternoon. I'm just glad it's not yesterday's weather, otherwise I wouldn't see any of you, I'm sure. We've done these epic storytellings since our previous pastor, who was here with us today, started them back in 2007 when we first brought him. And we did it for many years until the pandemic. And then, of course, we haven't. So this is our first time again since then. We appreciate you all coming out. Just a few housekeeping things. We're just going to go straight through. It's about half of the book of Matthew, about 90 minutes. Afterwards, we have some light refreshments, courtesy of our deacons. And if you need the restrooms, just get up and go out. They're out these doors to the right. It's also where the ramp door is. And if you need to leave for whatever reason, we just ask you to do so quietly. With that, we'll get started.
We'll get started, and attention spans in antiquity were a lot longer than they are today. They must have had better seats or something. But all of these Gospels were originally oral. They were originally stories that were told. And there's some speculation that some of them were told almost beginning to end every time everybody gathered. Probably not Matthew's Gospel. Now, although it comes first in the canon, it was not the first written. They thought it was. That's why it's number one: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The earliest one was Mark, and it's quite obvious that Matthew knew Mark. That's a problem for those of us who are doing storytelling now, who happen to know Mark, because Matthew takes things and rearranges them. But we'll do our best to get through. Probably composed as we have it now, pretty much, sometime between 80, 85, maybe as late as 90. Probably not. Let's say 80 of the Common Era. The earliest gospel, Mark, begins with the story of Jesus' baptism. Luke takes it all the way back to the famous Christmas story that Charlie Brown made famous. John goes back to the cosmic beginning of all things. In the beginning was the Word. And Matthew, in what was still a church that was very much attached to the synagogue, feels it important to attach the story to the history of the Jews. We know about genealogies. If you go back about 14 generations, you've got something over 16,000 ancestors. So this story begins with the patrilineal genealogy, that is, the sons of the fathers down through the ages, according to Matthew. And you'll see why Matthew's constructed it in this way, I hope, when we get to the end. A few things to watch, to listen for in it. I said it's the patrilineal line, but there are some women who creep into it. One of them is called Tamar. You didn't learn about her in Sunday school. She tricks, the short of the story is, she tricks her father-in-law into impregnating her by dressing up as a prostitute. Then there's Tamar. There's Rahab, who was a prostitute and helped the spies in the reconnaissance of Jericho. And then there's Ruth, who, she wasn't a prostitute, but she was a foreigner, a Moabite. So there's some of those people in the ancestry. And then the fourth woman, she's not named, but you'll figure out who she is if you remember any movies from the 50s, if you're old enough, or if you know your Bible. The account of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of Abraham, the son of David. Abraham was the father of Isaac, and Isaac the father of Jacob, Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers, and Judah the father of Perez and Zerah by by Tamar. And Perez is the father of Hezron, Hezron the father of Aram, and Aram the father of Minadab, and Minadab the father of Nashon, and Nashon the father of Salmon, Salmon the father of Boaz, and Boaz the father, Salmon the father of Boaz by Rahab, and Boaz the father of Obed by Ruth, and Obed the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of David the king. And David was the father of Solomon by the wife of Uriah. And Solomon the father of Rehoboam, Rehoboam the father of Abijah, and Abijah the father of Asa, and Asa the father of Jehoshaphat, Jehoshaphat the father of Joram, Joram the father of Uzziah, Uzziah the father of Jotham, Jotham the father of Ahaz, and Ahaz the father of Zekiah, Zekiah Manasseh, Manasseh the father of Amos, Amos the father of Josiah, Josiah the father of Jeconiah, and his brothers at the time of the deportation to Babylon. And after the deportation to Babylon, Jeconiah was the father of Salatiel, and Salatiel the father of Zerubbabel, Zerubbabel the father of Abiad, and Abiad the father of Eliakim, and Eliakim the father of Azor, and Azor the father of Zadok, Zadok the father of Achim, and Achim the father of Eliad, and Eliad the father of Eleazar, and Eleazar the father of Mathan, Mathan of Jacob, Jacob the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, who gave birth to Jesus, who is called Messiah. So, all the generations from Abraham to David were 14 generations. And from David to the deportation to Babylon, 14 generations. And from the deportation to Babylon to the Messiah, 14 generations.
Now, the birth of Jesus, the Messiah, took place in this way. When his mother Mary had been engaged to Joseph, but before they lived together, she was found to be with child from the Holy Spirit. Now, her husband Joseph, being a righteous man and unwilling to expose her to public disgrace, had planned to dismiss her quietly. But just as he had resolved to do this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, "Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife, for the child conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will give birth to a son, and you will name him Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins." Now all this took place to fulfill what the Lord had spoken through the prophet. "Look, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they will name him Emmanuel," which means God is with us. Now when Joseph awoke from sleep, he did as the angel of the Lord commanded. He took Mary as his wife, but he had no marital relations with her until she had borne a son, and he named him Jesus. Now, in the time of Herod, after Jesus had been born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men came from the east saying, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising, and we have come to pay him homage." Now when King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They answered him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means the least of the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people, Israel." Then Herod secretly called for the wise men, and he learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child. And when you have found him, bring me word, so that I also may go and pay him homage." Now, when they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at his rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. And when they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. Now, after they had left, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and flee to Egypt, and remain there until I tell you. For Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him." Then Joseph got up, took the child and his mother by night, and went to Egypt. And he remained there until the death of Herod, thus fulfilling what the Lord had spoken through the prophet, "Out of Egypt I have called my son." Now, when Herod saw that he had been tricked by the wise men, he was infuriated, and he sent and killed all the children in and around Bethlehem who were 2 years old and under, according to the time he had learned from the wise men. Then was fulfilled what had been spoken through the prophet. A voice was heard in Ramah, wailing and loud lamentation. Rachel, weeping for her children. She refused to be consoled because they are no more. When Herod died, an angel of the Lord suddenly appeared to Joseph in a dream in Egypt and said to him, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and return to the land of Israel, for those who were seeking the child's life are dead." Then Joseph got up, took the child and his mother, and returned to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was ruling over Judea in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. And having been warned in a dream, he set out and went to the district of Galilee. There he made his home in a town called Nazareth, so that what had been spoken through the prophet might be fulfilled. He will be called a Nazarene.
John the Baptist appeared in the wilderness of Judea, proclaiming, "Repent, because the kingdom of heaven has come near." This is the one of whom the prophet Isaiah spoke, saying, Prepare the way of the Lord, make his paths straight. Now, John was dressed in camel's hair, and he wore a leather belt around his waist, and his food was locusts and wild honey. And the people of Jerusalem and all the people of Judea and the whole region around the Jordan came out and were baptized by John in the river Jordan, confessing their sins. And when John saw many of the Pharisees and Sadducees coming to be baptized by him, he said to them, "Who warned you to flee from the wrath that's coming? Bear the fruits worthy of repentance, and do not presume to say to yourselves, 'We have Abraham as our father,' because I tell you, Abraham is able to raise up children from these very stones. Even now the axe is laid to the root of the tree, and all those trees that do not bear good fruit are thrown into the fire. I have baptized you with water, but the one who is coming will baptize you with the Holy Spirit and with fire. His winnowing fork is in his hand, and he's clearing the threshing floor. The wheat he will gather into his granary, but the chaff he will burn with unquenchable fire." It's after this that Jesus comes to be baptized by John, and after his baptism is driven out into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil.
Then Jesus, when he saw the crowd, he went up the mountain. And after he had sat down, his disciples came, and he spoke to them, teaching them, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice, be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who came before you. You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything but be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under a bushel basket, but on a lampstand so that it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine so that others may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law and the prophets. I have not come to abolish, but to fulfill. Truly I tell you, until heaven and earth have passed away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter of the law shall pass until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But those who do them and teach them to others will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Truly, I tell you that your reward will be great in heaven. You have heard it said to those of ancient times, "You shall not murder," and whoever murders is liable to judgment. But I say to you, if you are angry with a brother or sister, you are liable to judgment. And if you insult a brother or sister, you're liable to the council. And if you say, you fool, you're liable to the hell of fire. Therefore, when you are at the altar offering your gift, if you remember that a brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there and go. First, be reconciled with your brother or sister. Then come and offer your gift. Make amends with your accuser while you're on your way to court with him. Or your accuser will hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and the guard will throw you into prison. Truly, I tell you, you will never get out until you have paid the last penny. You have heard it said, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you, anyone who looks at another woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out, throw it away. Better for you to lose one of your members than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off, throw it away. Better for you to lose one of your members than your whole body to go to hell. You have heard it said, whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. But I say to you, whoever divorces his wife, except on the grounds of unchastity, causes her to commit adultery. And whoever divorces his wife commits adultery. Whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. And you have heard it said, you shall not swear falsely, but carry out the vows you have made before God. But I say to you, do not swear at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. And do not swear by your head. You cannot make one hair white or black. Let your answer be absolutely yes or absolutely no. Anything more than that comes from the evil one. You have heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist the evildoer. If anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn and give them also the other. If someone sues you for your coat, give them your cloak also. If someone forces you to walk 1 mile, go also the 2nd mile. Give to all those who beg from you, and do not refuse anyone who wants to borrow from you. You have heard it said, love your neighbor, hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies, and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. For he makes the sun rise on the evil and on the good, and he sends the rains on the righteous and on the unrighteous. If you love only those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet only your brother or your sister, what more have you done? Do not even the Gentiles do the same? Be perfect, therefore, just as your Father in heaven is perfect.
Beware of practicing your piety publicly in order to be seen by others, because then you have no reward from your Father in heaven. So, when you're giving, Do not sound a trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, so that they may be praised by others. To tell you the truth, they've already received their reward. When you give, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, that your giving may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. And when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites. They love to stand up in the synagogue and on the street corners in order to be seen by others. To tell you the truth, they've already received their reward. When you pray, go into your room, shut the door, and pray to your Father in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. So, pray like this. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts just as we are forgiving the debts of others. And do not bring us to the time of trial, but deliver us from the evil one. And do not heap up empty phrases as the Gentiles do. They think that they'll be heard for their many words. Your Father already knows what you need. When you pray, if you forgive the trespasses of others, your Father in heaven will forgive you. But if you do not forgive others, neither will your Father in heaven forgive you your trespasses. And when you fast, do not look dismal like the hypocrites. They love to show the disfiguration of their faces to indicate that they are fasting. When you fast, wash your face, comb your hair, so that your fasting may be done in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust corrupt and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust corrupts and where thieves do not break in and steal. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eye is healthy, then your whole body will be filled with light. But if your eye is unhealthy, then your body will be filled with darkness. And if the light in you is darkness, how dark that darkness will be. No one can serve two masters, because a slave will either love the one and hate the other, or be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. So I say to you, do not be anxious about tomorrow, saying, what will we eat, or what will we drink, or about your body, saying, what will we wear? Is life not more than food and drink, and the body not more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air. They neither plant nor reap nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. And are you not of more worth than they? And who, by worrying, can add 1 hour to the span of your life? Why do you worry about your body, what you will wear? Look at the lilies of the field. They neither spin nor toil, and yet I tell you, Solomon was not dressed as beautifully as these. So if your Father in heaven so clothes the grass of the field that is alive today and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, do you have so little faith that you think you will be clothed any less? So, do not worry about tomorrow, saying, what will we eat, what will we drink, and what will we wear? Because the Gentiles worry about these things. And your heavenly Father already knows what you need. Do not worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow will have troubles of its own. Do not judge, so that you may not be judged. Because with the judgment that you judge, you will be judged. And the measure that you give will be the measure that you get. Why is it that you see the speck that is in your neighbor's eye, but you fail to notice that you have a log in your own eye? Or how can you say to your neighbor, here, let me take that speck out of your eye, when you have a log in your own eye? You hypocrite. First, take the log out of your eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. Ask, and you will receive. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be open to you. Because everyone who asks receives, and everyone who seeks finds, and to everyone who knocks, the door will be opened. Look, who among you, if your child asks you for bread, would give that child a stone? Or if your child asks for a fish, would give that child a snake? Well, if you, who are evil, know how to give good gifts, how much more will your Father in heaven give you all good things? In everything, treat others the way you would have them treat you, because this is the law and the prophets. Enter by the narrow gate, because the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction. And there are many who take it. But the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life. And there are few who find it. Watch out for false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. By your fruits you will know them. Do you get grapes from thorns or figs from thistles? A good tree bears good fruit. A bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear good fruit, and a good tree cannot bear bad fruit. And every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. So, by your fruits, you will know them. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but those who do the will of my Father who is in heaven. In that day there will be many who say, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? Did we not cast out demons in your name? Did we not do great deeds of power in your name? And I will say to them, go away, you who are evil. I do not know you. So all those who hear these words of mine and do them will be like the wise man who built his house upon the rock. And the rains fell, and the floods rose, and the winds beat against that house, but the house stood firm because it was built on the rock. But those who hear my words and do not do them will be like the foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rains fell, and the floods came, and the winds beat against that house, and it fell down. And great was the fall of it. When Jesus had finished speaking these words. Crowds were amazed because he taught them as someone who had authority and not in the way that the scribes do.
When Jesus entered Capernaum, a centurion came up to him, appealing to him and saying, "Lord, my servant is lying at home, paralyzed, in terrible distress." Jesus said to him, "I will come and cure him." But the centurion said to him, "Lord, I am not worthy to have you come under my roof, but only speak the word, and my servant will be healed. For I also am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. And I say to one, 'Go,' and he goes, and to another, 'Come,' and he comes. And to my slave I say, 'Do this,' and my slave does it." And when Jesus heard what the centurion had said, he was amazed, and he said to those who followed him, "Truly, I tell you, in no one in Israel have I found such faith. For I tell you, many will come from east and west and eat with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven, while the heirs of the kingdom will be thrown into the outer darkness, where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth." Then Jesus said to the centurion, "Go, and let it be done for you according to your faith." And the servant was healed in that hour.
Then Jesus summoned the 12 disciples. He gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out and to heal every disease and every sickness. These are the names of the 12 apostles. First, Simon, also known as Peter, and his brother Andrew. James, the son of Zebedee, and his brother John. Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the tax collector, James, son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus, Simon the Canaanian, and Judas Iscariot, the one who betrayed Jesus. Jesus take these 12 and sent them out with these instructions. Go nowhere among the Gentiles and enter no house of the Samaritans, but go instead to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And as you go, proclaim the good news to them. The kingdom of heaven has come near.
See, I am sending you out like sheep into the midst of wolves. So be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Beware of them, for they will hand you over to councils and flog you in their synagogues, and you will be dragged before governors and kings because of me, as a testimony to them and to the Gentiles. Now, when you are handed over, do not worry about how you are to speak or what you are to say. For what you are to say will be given to you at that time. For it is not you who speak, but the Spirit of your Father speaking through you. Brother will betray brother to death, and a father his child, and children will rise against parents and have them put to death. And you will be hated by all because of my name. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. If you are persecuted in one town, flee to the next. For I tell you, you will not have gone through all the towns in Israel before the Son of Man comes.
Now, when John the Baptist in prison heard about the things that the Messiah was doing, he sent some of his disciples to ask him, are you the one that is to come, or are we to wait for someone else? Jesus said to them, go tell John what you hear and see, that the blind receive their sight, the lame walk, lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor have good news brought to them, and blessed is anyone who does not take offense at me. And when they had left him, he said to the crowds, what did you come out in the wilderness to see? A reed shaken by the wind? What did you come out in the wilderness to see? Someone dressed in soft robes? Those who wear soft robes live in palaces. What did you come out to see then? A prophet? Yes, I tell you, and much more than a prophet. This is the one of whom the scriptures say, prepare the way of the Lord, make his paths straight. A voice crying in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord. I tell you the truth, of those born of woman, there is no one who has arisen greater than John the Baptist. And yet whoever is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater yet. The kingdom has suffered violence since John, and violent people take it by force. But the law and the prophets foretold of the coming of John. And if you can accept it, he's Elijah, the one who is to come. Those who have ears, let them hear. To what shall I compare this generation? It's like children playing in the marketplace. We played the flute and you wouldn't dance. We sang a dirge and you wouldn't mourn. John came eating and drinking. And they called him a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. But wisdom will be vindicated by her deeds.
It was at this time that Jesus miraculously fed 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And immediately after feeding the 5,000, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead to the other side, while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. And when evening came, he was there, alone. But by this time, the boat battered by the waves, was far from shore, for the wind was against them. And early in the morning, Jesus came walking towards them on the lake. But when the disciples saw him, they were terrified and said, "It's a ghost." They cried out in fear. And Jesus immediately said to them, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." Then Peter answered him, saying, "Lord, if it is really you, command me to come to you on the water." So Jesus said to him, "Come." Then Peter got out of the boat, began walking on the water, and came towards Jesus. But when he noticed the fierce wind, he became frightened, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me!" And immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" And then when they had got back into the boat, the wind ceased. And those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God."
After teaching his disciples, Jesus said, "Father, I thank you that you have hidden these things from the wise and the intelligent and have revealed them to infants. No one knows the Son but the Father, and no one knows the Father but the Son and those to whom the Son reveals him. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Later in the story, Jesus came to his hometown, Nazareth. And on the Sabbath, he entered the synagogue to teach. Now, many were astounded, saying, "Where did this man get all this? What? All this wisdom and these powerful deeds? Where did he get all this? Isn't this the son of the carpenter? And is not his mother Mary? And are not his brothers James and Joseph and Judas and Simon and his sisters right here with us? Where then did he get all this?" They took offense at him. Jesus said, "A prophet is not without honor except in his own country and in his own house." And he could do no great deeds there because of their unbelief. Jesus came with his disciples to the region of Caesarea Philippi. And he asked them, "Who do the people say that the Son of Man is?" And they answered, "Well, some say Elijah, some John the Baptist, others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." Jesus said, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter answered him, "You're the Messiah, the Son of God." Jesus said to him, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, because flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. I tell you the truth, you are Peter, Petros, and on this rock, Petra, I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. And he strictly commanded them to tell no one that he was the Messiah.
And Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who wished to settle accounts with his slaves. When he began his reckoning, one was brought in who owed him 10,000 talents. And as he could not pay, the king ordered him to be sold, together with his wife and children and all his possessions, and payment to be made. But the slave fell at his feet and said, 'Have patience, and I will pay you everything.' And the king, out of pity, released the slave and forgave him that debt. But that same slave, as he was going out, came across a fellow slave who owed him 100 denarii. And seizing him by the throat, he said, 'Pay what you owe.' And the slave fell at his knees and pleaded with him, saying, 'Have patience, and I will pay you.' But he refused and went and threw him into prison until he paid the entire debt. When the fellow slaves saw this, they were greatly distressed, and they went to the Lord and told them all that had happened. And the king summoned the slave and said, 'You wicked slave, I forgave you all that debt because you pleaded with me. Should you not have had mercy on your fellow slave as I had mercy on you?' And in anger, he handed the slave over to be tortured until the entire debt was paid. So my Father in heaven will do to every one of you who do not forgive their brother or sister from their heart." The kingdom of heaven is as if a landowner went out early in the morning to hire laborers to work in his vineyard. And after agreeing with them for the usual daily wage of a denarius, he sent them into the vineyard. About 9 o'clock, he went out and saw others standing idly around. He said to them, "You also go into the vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right." And about noon and about 3 o'clock, he did the same. And about 5 o'clock, he went out and he saw others standing around. And he said, "Why are you standing here idle all day?" They said, "Because no one has hired us." So he said, "You also go into the vineyard." When evening came, the landowner said to his manager, "Call the laborers and give them their pay, beginning with the last, then going to the first." Now when those hired about 5 o'clock came, each of them received a denarius, the usual daily wage. So when the first came, they thought they would receive more. But each of them received a denarius. And they grumbled against the landowner when they received it, saying, "These last have only worked here an hour, and you made them equal to us who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat." But he said to one of them, "Friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree to work for me for a denarius? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give to these last the same as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do with what is my own of how I choose? Or are you envious because I am generous. So the first will be last, and the last will be first.
Then Jesus said to them, "What do you think? A man had 2 sons. And he went to the first, and he said to him, 'Son, go and work in the vineyard today.' And the son answered him, saying, 'I will not.' But later he changed his mind and went. Then the father went to the second son and said the same. And that son said, 'I go, sir.' But he never went. Then Jesus said to them, 'Which son did the will of his father?' They answered, 'The first.' Then Jesus said to them, 'Truly, I tell you, the tax collectors and the prostitutes are going into the kingdom of God ahead of you. For John came to you in the way of righteousness, and you did not believe him. But the tax collectors and the prostitutes believed him. And even after you saw it, you still did not change your minds and believe him.'"
Once again, Jesus spoke to them in parables, saying, "The kingdom of heaven is like a king who gave a wedding banquet for his son. He sent his slaves to call those invited to the wedding banquet, but they would not come. He sent other slaves saying, 'Tell them, look, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and fat calves have been slaughtered. Everything is ready. Come to the wedding banquet.' But they made light of it and went away. One to his farm, another to his business, and the rest seized the slaves, mistreated them, and killed them. The king was enraged, and he sent his troops to destroy those murderers and burn their city. Then he said to his slaves, 'Those invited to the wedding banquet were not worthy. Go, therefore, into the main streets and invite everyone you find to the wedding banquet.' So those slaves went out and gathered all whom they could find, both good and bad. So the wedding hall was filled with guests. But when the king came in to see the guests, he saw a man there who was not wearing a wedding robe. He said to him, 'Friend, how did you get in here without a wedding robe?' And he was speechless. The king said to his attendants, 'Bind him hand and foot and throw him into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen.'" When the Pharisees heard that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together. And one of them, a lawyer, asked Jesus a question to test him. "Teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest?" Jesus answered, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Upon these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophets." Now, while the Pharisees were gathered together, Jesus asked them this question: what do you think of the Messiah? Whose son is he? They said, the son of David. Jesus said, how is it then that David, by the Spirit, calls him Lord, saying, the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand, and I will put your enemies under your feet. If David thus calls him Lord, how can he be his son? No one was able to give him an answer. And from that time on, no one dared ask him any more questions. Then Jesus spoke to the crowds and to his disciples, saying, the scribes and Pharisees sit on Moses' seat. Therefore do as they teach you and follow it. But do not do as they do, for they do not practice what they preach. They tie up heavy burdens, hard to bear, and lay them on the shoulders of others, while they're unwilling to lift a finger to move them. They do all their deeds to be seen in public, for they make their phylacteries broad and their fringes long. They love to have the place of honor at banquets and the best seats in the synagogue, and to be greeted with respect in the marketplace. Now people call them rabbi. But you are not to be called rabbi, for you have one teacher, and you are all students. And call no one your father here on earth, for you have one Father, the one in heaven. Nor are you to be called instructors, for you have one instructor, the Messiah. The greatest among you will be your servant. All who exalt themselves will be humbled, but all who humble themselves will be exalted.
But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you lock people out of the kingdom of heaven, for you do not go in yourselves, and when others are going in, you stop them. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you cross sea and land to make a single convert, and you make the new convert twice as much a child of hell as yourselves.
Woe to you, blind guides, for you say, whoever swears by the sanctuary is bound by nothing, but whoever swears by the gold that's in the sanctuary is bound by the oath. You blind fools, for which is greater, the gold or the sanctuary that makes the gold sacred? And you say, whoever swears by the altar is bound by nothing. Whoever swears by the gift that is on the altar is bound by the oath. How blind are you? For which is greater, the gift or the altar that makes the gift sacred? Therefore, whoever swears by the altar swears by it and by everything on it. Whoever swears by the sanctuary swears by it and by the one who dwells in it. Whoever swears by heaven swears by the throne of God and the one seated upon it.
Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you tithe mint and dill and cumin, and you neglect the weightier matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faith. It is these you ought to have practiced without neglecting the others. You blind guides, you strain out a gnat, but swallow a camel. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you clean the outside of the cup and of the plate, but the inside is filled with greed and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup, so that the outside also may become clean.
Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, for you are like whitewashed tombs, which on the outside look beautiful, but inside are full of bones of the dead and all kinds of filth. So too you also on the outside look righteous to others, but inside are filled with hypocrisy and lawlessness.
Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you build the tombs of the prophets, and you decorate the graves of the righteous, and you say, if we had been alive in the time of our ancestors, we would not have taken part with them in shedding the blood of the prophets. Thus, you testify against yourselves that you are the descendants of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up, then, the measure of your ancestors. You snakes, you brood of vipers, how can you escape being sentenced to hell?
Therefore I will send you prophets, sages, and scribes, some of whom you will kill and crucify, and others you will flog in your synagogues and pursue from town to town, so that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed on earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, son of Berechiah, whom you killed between the sanctuary and the altar. Truly I tell you, all this will come upon this generation.
Then the kingdom of heaven will be like this. 10 bridesmaids took up their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. Now, 5 of them were foolish, and 5 of them were wise. When the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them. But the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. Now, as the bridegroom was delayed, all of them grew drowsy and slept. But at midnight, there came a shout, "Here is the bridegroom. Come out to meet him." So all those bridesmaids got up and trimmed their lamps. Then the foolish said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out." But the wise replied, "No, there will not be enough oil for you and for us. You should go to the dealer and buy some more for yourselves." Now, while they were gone to buy the oil, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went with him into the wedding banquet, and the door was shut. Later, the other bridesmaids came also, saying, "Lord, Lord, open up to us." But he replied, "Truly I tell you, I do not know you." Keep awake, therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour.
For it is as if a man going on a journey summoned his slaves to entrust his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2 talents, and to another 1 talent. Then he went away. Now the one who had received the 5 talents went off at once and traded with them and made 5 more talents. And the one who received the 2 talents went off and made 2 more talents. But the one that received the 1 talent went off and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. After a long time, the owner of the slaves returned to settle accounts with them. And the one who had received the 5 talents came forward with 5 more talents, saying, Master, you handed over to me 5 talents. See, I have made 5 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. And the one who received the 2 talents came forward and said, Master, you handed over to me 2 talents. See, I have made 2 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. Then the one who received the 1 talent came forward and said, Master, I knew you to be a harsh man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you did not scatter seed. So I was afraid and hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours. But he said, You wicked and lazy slave. You knew, did you, that I reap where I did not sow and gather where I did not scatter, because I am a harsh man? Well, then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers. And upon my return, I would receive what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. For to all who have, even more will be given. But for those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. As for this worthless slave, throw him into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. When the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the nations are gathered before him, he will separate the peoples one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will say to those at his right hand, Come, you that are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food, thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me. Then the righteous will say to him, Lord, when was it we saw you hungry and gave you food, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? When was it we saw you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing, or sick and in prison and visited you? And the king will say to them, Truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me. Then he'll say to those at his left hand, Depart from me, you that are accursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. Because I was hungry, and you gave me no food. Thirsty, you gave me nothing to drink. A stranger, you did not welcome me. Naked, you gave me no clothing. Sick and in prison, and you did not visit me. Then they also answer, Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick or in prison and did not take care of you? And he will say to them, Truly I tell you, just as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me. And these will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life.
When Jesus had finished saying these things, he said to his disciples, You know that the Passover is 2 days away, and the Son of Man will be handed over to be crucified. Now, the chief priests and the scribes, elders of the people, conspired together in the house of Caiaphas, the high priest, to put Jesus to death after arresting him by stealth. But they said to each other, let this not be during the festival, or there may be a riot among the people. While they were in Bethany, at the home of Simon the leper, a woman came in carrying an alabaster jar of very expensive ointment. And she poured the ointment over the head of Jesus. Now, the disciples, when they saw this, they were angry, and they said to one another, why this waste? Well, this could have been sold for a large sum and the money given to the poor. But Jesus, aware of it, said to them, why are you bothering her? She has done a good service for me. The poor you will always have with you. She has anointed my body beforehand for my burial. I tell you, wherever the gospel is proclaimed throughout the world, what this woman has done will be told in memory of her. Then, Judas Iscariot, one of the disciples, went to the temple, to the chief priests and elders, and he asked them, what would you give me to betray Jesus to you? And they paid him 30 silver pieces. So, from that time on, he looked for an opportunity to betray Jesus. Now, it was the first day of unleavened bread, and the disciples came to Jesus and asked him, where do you want us to go to prepare for you to eat the Passover? Jesus said, go into the city to a certain man and say to him, my time is near. I will eat the Passover with my disciples in your house. So they went away and did as they had been instructed. When it was evening, Jesus took his place at the table. And as they were eating, he said to them, I tell you the truth. One of you will betray me. One of you who is eating with me. They began to be distressed, very sad, and one by one they said, surely I'm not the one. Jesus said, it is the one who dips his bread in the bowl with me. Son of Man goes as it has been written of him, but woe to that man who betrays the Son of Man. It would be better for him if he had not been born. And as they were eating, Jesus took bread, blessed it, broke it, and gave it to them, saying, take it. This is my body. And he took a cup, gave thanks, and he offered it to them, saying, drink of this, all of you. This cup is the covenant in my blood that is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you the truth. I will not drink again of the fruit of the vine until I drink it anew in the kingdom of heaven. And when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives, and Jesus said to them, you will all desert me, because it is written in the scriptures, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I am raised, I will go before you into Galilee. Peter began to say to him, well, even if the others I deny you, I will not. Jesus said to him, this very night, before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times. Peter began to insist, even if I have to die with you, I will not deny you. And all the others said the same thing. And they came to the place called Gethsemane, and Jesus said to the disciples, Stay here while I go and pray. Taking with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, he began to be deeply distressed and troubled. And he said to them, I am so full of grief that I could die. Stay here and stay awake. And going on a little farther, he fell down and prayed, Father, let this cup pass from me. Yet not what I will, but what you will. And returning to his disciples, he found them asleep. And he said to Peter, could you not stay awake for an hour? Stay awake and pray that you do not fall into temptation, that you do not come to the time of trial. Oh, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. A second time, Jesus went away and prayed, Father, if it is not possible that this cup be removed from me, your will be done. And returning, again found them sleeping, because their eyes were heavy. A third time, Jesus went away and prayed the same thing and came back and said, still sleeping, still resting. Enough. The hour's come. Look, my betrayer is here. Now, immediately, as he said this, Judas arrived, one of the 12, with a crowd armed with clubs and swords, sent from the chief priests and elders of the people. Now, Judas had arranged a sign with them, saying, the one I kiss is the man. Arrest him. And immediately, going up to Jesus, Judas said to him, Rabbi, and kissed him. Jesus said, friend, what you are here to do, do quickly. And they laid hands on him to arrest him. One who stood nearby drew his sword and struck at the slave of the high priest, cutting off his ear. Jesus said to him, put your sword away. Those who take the sword will die by the sword. Do you not think that I could have prayed my Father to send 12 legions of angels? But then how would the Scriptures be fulfilled? The Scriptures say that this must happen. And they arrested Jesus and took him to the house, the palace of Caiaphas, the high priest. Now, Peter also followed at a distance right into the courtyard of the high priest. And there he sat with the guards, waiting to see how this would end. The high priest questioned Jesus, and they sought some testimony to put him to death. Many bore false witness. At least 2 of them said, I heard this man say, I will tear down the temple of God and build it up again in 3 days. Chief priest said to Jesus, you hear what these witnesses say. Will you make no answer? But Jesus was silent. Again, the high priest said to him, I put you under oath of the living God. Are you the Messiah, the Son of God? And Jesus answered, you have said so. You will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven. Or at this the high priest said to them, you hear this blasphemy? What do you say? And they all shouted, kill him! Some of the guards began to spit on him and slap him in the face. Some of them came up to him and struck him, saying, prophesy, Messiah, tell us who it was that just hit you. Meanwhile, Peter was down below in the courtyard, and the servant girl of the high priest saw him and said, you also are with the man Jesus from Nazareth. And Peter denied it, saying, I don't know what you're talking about. And he went into the entryway. Then another girl saw him there and said, you are one of this man's disciples. And again, Peter denied it. Later on, some of the bystanders said to him, well, look, surely you are one of them because you speak with a Galilean accent. And Peter began to call down curses on himself, swearing and saying, I don't even know the man. And at once, the cock crowed. And Peter remembered the words of Jesus, before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times. And he went away and broke down and wept bitterly. They brought Jesus to Pilate the governor. Now, when Judas learned that Jesus had been condemned, he had a change of heart. And he went to the temple, to the chief priests and elders, and he said to them, I have sinned by spilling innocent blood. And they said to him, do we care? Take care of it yourself. And throwing down the 30 silver pieces, he went out of the temple and he hanged himself. The chief priests and elders said, we cannot put this money in the temple treasury because it is blood money. So they bought a potter's field as a place to bury foreigners. And then was fulfilled what was spoken by the prophet Jeremiah. The price that was put on his head by the people, 30 silver pieces. With this, they bought a potter's field, as the Lord commanded.
Now, Jesus stood before the governor. And the governor asked him, are you king of the Jews? Jesus answered, you say so. But when he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he did not answer. So that the governor said to him, do you not hear all the accusations they are making against you? But Jesus gave no answer, not even to a single charge, so that the governor was greatly amazed. Now, at the festival, the governor was accustomed to release a prisoner for the crowd, anyone whom they wanted. At that time, there was a notorious prisoner named Jesus Barabbas. And when the people had gathered together, the governor asked them, whom do you want me to release for you? Jesus Barabbas or Jesus, who is called the Messiah? For he realized that it was out of jealousy that they had handed him over. Now, while he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him saying, have nothing to do with that innocent man, for today I have suffered greatly because of a dream about him. Now, the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus killed. Then the governor again asked the crowd, which of the two do you want me to release for you? They answered, Barabbas. And Pilate said, then what am I to do with Jesus, who is called the Messiah? All of them said, Let him be crucified. And Pilate said, Why? What evil has he done? But they shouted all the more, Let him be crucified! So when Pilate saw that he could do nothing, but rather that a riot was beginning, he took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd, saying, I am innocent of this man's blood. See to it yourselves.
So Pilate released Barabbas. And then after flogging Jesus, he handed him over to be crucified. The guards of the governor took him in the governor's headquarters, and a whole cohort surrounded him. They stripped him of his clothes and put a scarlet robe on him. And after weaving some thorns into a crown, they put it on his head and put a rod in his right hand. And they knelt before him, mocking him, saying, Hail, King of the Jews! And they spat on him and struck him on the head with the rod. And after mocking him, they stripped him of the robe and put his own clothes on him and led him out to be crucified. As they went, they came across a man from Cyrene. His name was Simon. And they compelled him to carry the cross. When they came to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull, they offered Jesus wine mixed with gall, but when Jesus tasted it, he would not drink it. And after they crucified him, they cast lots to divide his clothes among them. And then they sat down and kept watch over him. They put the charge against him above him. It said, This is Jesus, King of the Jews. Then they also crucified two bandits with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by derided him, saying, You, who would tear down the temple and build it in 3 days? Save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross. In the same way, the chief priest, along with the scribes and elders, also mocked him, saying, He saved others, let him save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him come down from the cross now, and we will believe. He trusts God. Let God deliver him if he wants to. He says he is God's son. And in the same way, the bandits crucified with him also taunted him. From noon to about 3 o'clock, darkness covered the whole land. And at 3 o'clock, Jesus cried in a loud voice, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? When some of the bystanders heard it, they said, This man is calling for Elijah. And one of them quickly went and filled a sponge with sour wine and put it on a stick and gave it to him to drink. But the other said, No, wait, let us see if Elijah will come and save him. Then Jesus again cried in a loud voice and breathed his last. Ah! And at that moment, the curtain in the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The ground shook and rocks were split. The tombs were open, and many of the true believers who had fallen asleep, the saints, rose. After the resurrection, they came out of the tombs into the holy city and appeared to many. When the centurion and those who were with him to keep watch over him saw the earthquake and what had happened, they were terrified and said, "Truly, this was God's Son." Many of the women were there also, off at a distance. They had come with Jesus from Galilee and had provided for him. Among them was Mary Magdalene, and Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of the sons of Zebedee.
When it was evening, Joseph of Arimathea, who was a wealthy man and a disciple of Jesus, came to Pilate to request that he be granted the body of Jesus. Pilate gave orders that the body should be given to Joseph. And he took a clean linen shroud and wrapped the body of Jesus in the shroud and laid it in his own new tomb that had been hewn out of the rock, and rolled a great stone against the door. Now, the chief priests and elders came to Pilate and said to him, "Sir, we remember that while this man was still alive, this impostor, he told his disciples that he would rise again from the dead on the third day. So command that we be given a contingent of soldiers so that his disciples cannot say that he has been raised from the dead, and this last deceit be worse than the first." Pilate answered, I grant you the soldiers. Go and do what you can to make the tomb secure.
After the Sabbath, as the first day of the week was dawning, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to see the tomb. And suddenly, there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord, descending from heaven, came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothing white as snow. For fear of him, the guards shook and became like dead men. But the angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid. I know you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He is risen, as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he has been raised from the dead, and indeed is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him. This is my message for you." Then the women quickly left the tomb with fear and great joy and ran to tell the disciples. Suddenly, Jesus met them and said to them, "Greetings." And the women came to him and took hold of his feet and worshiped him. Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me.
Now, as they were going, some of the guards went into the city and told the chief priests what had happened. And when the chief priests had gathered the elders and taken counsel, they decided to give a large sum of money to the soldiers, saying to them, "Say to the people, his disciples came and stole him away by night while we were asleep. And if this comes to the ears of the governor, we'll satisfy him and keep you out of trouble." So they took the money, and they did as they had been instructed. And this story has been spread around to this very day. Then the 11 went to Galilee, to the mountain to which Jesus had directed them. And when they saw him, they doubted somewhat. Jesus came and said to them, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. So go and make disciples of all peoples, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to observe all the things that I have commanded you. And remember, I'm always with you, even to the end of time."
Thank you very much for your patience. And we have some rest pastor in the back here. And thank you again for coming. And enjoy the Holy Week.
We left out a few things.